we then start to help speak a different language in terms of once we start to see them moving towards who they want to be, because we're always talking about that future self, then it's about really starting to learn the muscle, the language, and the behaviors of grit and growth and how to foster that. It's not really necessary. It's harder to foster grit and growth mindset when you're trying to push your child to be something that you want them to be, and yet they're not emotionally or intellectually or cognitively aligned with. But it's far more meaningful when they start to move deliberately towards an identity, and then we start showing them how important, demonstrating through our own modeling, but also the language in parenting, the growth language in parenting around overcoming fears, moving through learning zones, growth zones, and how we expand towards who we're trying to be. And that we don't get there when we stay in our comfort zone. Right? So you see this potentiality in how we can harness and help our children see those strengths. And then once they're able to move towards things they really want to try to do, now I can start teaching what it means to deliberately grow and stretch through those limitations, those weaknesses that might be in the way, right? The weaknesses of a fixed mindset, the weaknesses of excuses, the weaknesses of lack of confidence, for example, right? And how do I move through those consciously, and how do I promote that as a parent, right? So I think giving our children, I think Mindy may have said this, but she said this earlier. She didn't say it in our talk, but she made a reference to letting our children learn through failure. And that can be extremely critical in building that sense of agency, that sense of self-efficacy when they are moving towards goals that are meaningful in their life, and how they learn through failure, right? And how we as a parent can celebrate the failure as an opportunity for growth, right? And so many of our children can be kind of crippled with anxiety because to them, failure is a breakdown of their identity. Because maybe they identify with perfection. Maybe they identify as being smart. And smart doesn't equate to failure. Smart means straight A's. So anything less than a straight A is failure. So this notion around failure is this notion around seeing failure as not necessarily my identity, but it's a moment in time for me to learn and grow, right? And experience that stretching of my comfort zone, right? So what does this mean? What can we do with our kids today? Well, you can try this survey, give it a try, talk to your children, you can do it yourself. You can talk about your past self when you do this survey with your child, and how you used to be one way and how you developed this kind of grittiness when you started to realize what you wanted to do in your life, and how that grittiness led to these outcomes that your children experience today. But I really believe that so many of the success stories that we see with people with disabilities has a tremendous amount to do with following their interests or passions and developing the grittiness to persevere. And that's so important with the young adults that we love today that have ADHD, and how important it is, how grittiness is really a cornerstone of that growth, right? As parents, there's a language we can cultivate, a growth mindset, a grit mindset language we can cultivate. And I'm just giving a couple examples, but this is really supposed to springboard so that you can be thinking with your spouse, what is our language? What does it sound like as we as parents celebrating failure? What does it sound like if we are nurturing the if my son comes home today, and my daughter reflects on this, which I never thought she would, but she goes, my dad used to always tell me, what did you fail at today? I never wanted to hear from my children, what went well, as much as I wanted to hear, what did you fail at? Right. And what mistakes did you make is another example that I'll say, what mistakes did you make today? And really forcing them to think about those moments in the day where they tripped and fell. And what I'm trying to do in that is celebrate that our journey as a student has everything to do with learning. And if we're not making mistakes, we're not learning. Right? If we're not failing, then we're not really growing. And how the essence of life is built on failure. For many successful people, the success story of life is built on failure. I mean, raise your hand if you're a parent and you haven't failed, right? Doesn't happen. We don't choose to be parents because it's a fail safe zone. So embracing struggle and developing a language of never giving up, right? So and really, when you think about stress, you think about anxiety, it's how do we start to nurture and embrace those feelings and feel them and move deliberately through them with intentionality, meaning I know where I'm going and these feelings are getting in the way, right? And letting our children fall and learn and helping them to get, not picking them up, but being there to help them get up, helping them see the problems and work out the solutions. Here's something fun to try. This is a kind of a good homework assignment. You can give this a try with your kids. And you have to lead by example, but here's how it goes. Think of this mission being the hard thing rule, and teaching working this as a family around life is about doing things that are hard, right? When I have a goal, goals don't really come easily. They require deliberate practice and attention and discipline and focus, right? To achieve that, whatever the goal is. Try this with your children, do it yourself. Like, say, for example, you want to start New Year's resolution of going to the gym, or you want to do a 30-day yoga or 60-day or 90-day yoga practice. Whatever the goal is, have your children come up with a decision of what it is. And it has to be their own. That's the third rule there. The hard thing must be a personal choice, but something long-term. Maybe it's joining a sports team. Maybe it's practicing the violin. Maybe it's, getting on a roll, which some kids, they really want to be the best student possible. So I always say most students can achieve honor roll with deliberate practice. Right. So that might be a scenario too, but you can sit down and come up with goals that are meaningful. And then the second rule is you can't quit in the middle. Follow through. And try this with your family and see what you all learn through this experience and how you grow in this relationship around picking something of desire, of interests, and framing out this type of grit language around achieving it.